The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Welcome to Sarah's Country for another week broadcasting the matters that matter most to our growing community of passionate food and fibre producers who have open minds and open hearts about what our future may look like. I'd like to think it is focused on connecting with our most curious consumers. I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, bringing you Sarah's Country 3 nights a week live to engage direct with our live audience across 12 channels in alliance with New Zealand's largest and most trusted rural newspaper, of course, Farmers Weekly, and their digital site daily, farmersweekly.co.nz, for your latest in-depth stories in farming and growing. And then, of course, first thing in the morning, available on demand on podcast. We know that you enjoy that there. We are climbing into the last 50 days leading into New Zealand's election countdown. And there seems to be a lot of discussion that smells so much of the past that they have that musty antique shop smell. Hydropower projects and the government taking back the high country. What have we learnt from our history? I'd like to hear from you tonight in the comments about this. What should we not repeat in this country? You know, what didn't we get right? We should never do again. But what are some of those good things that we've done as a very unique country at the bottom of the world? You know, we've done that positive for a long run. We couldn't see it at the time. Things like dropping subsidies to farmers. We couldn't see that at the time, that ended up long-term being a positive. But, where do you stand on the privatisation of our state-owned assets? Was that the right thing at the time? And that's the thing. The right thing at the time. I am concerned a little bit that we're getting into a lot of commissions, and I understand the principle of setting up a commission, that it's set to last longer than just the term of government, which, of course, can see out these long-term visions. But is that the government of the time? And mandatory commission objectives can also be dangerous, especially if there is rushed consultation. But how do we actually see out long-term vision? That is something we all strive for, and especially on some of these mammoth challenges that we face and projects that will take over consecutive governments. And pace out that payment plan. I mean, she's pretty enormous. Take roading infrastructure, our hospitals, our housing, for example. These things shouldn't become a tit for tat on what you didn't achieve in a short window of 3 years, or the opposite, announce a really big eye-watering figure that means business. But you also get big figure fatigue from your population, because that's what I'm feeling like at the moment. And then in the latest announcement for $1 billion hydro dam to become, in this country, 100% renewable energy. What a fantastic outcome that would be. And a policy announcement that is it for the sake of the tagline, 100% renewable energy, versus the trade-off of using nature to fix nature, right? A hydro dam to reduce our reliance on renewable energy to fix climate change, but in the process destroys nature and the natural biodiversity by completely flooding it. Now, our family were in the detriment of losing our family farm to the flooding of the valley to create Lake Dunstan near Craigmore when the Clyde Dam was formed to send power to Auckland. Our next farm was leased from a power company to flood another valley, which didn't go ahead, and I know the whitewater kayakers and world-class fly fishermen were pretty stoked about that too. So this is something I grew up with. We seem to be in a race for the vote than a race for the objective of reducing our emissions and reducing beyond being the word, reducing, not offsetting. And how about we try to not destroy nature in the process? Now, on a very much more serious note, there's a very concerning article that I've just been reading. It's suggesting that Marmite makes a nice hot drink. You what? No. So simple game to get your thumbs moving. Always such a good one on Talkback. But I'm going to mix it up a bit. Are you a Marmite person or a Vegemite person? And what weird ways do you use Marmite or Vegemite that is rather than just on toast? Joel, which way do you swing on this?
I don't like Marmite, and I don't know what Vegemite is.
All right, that's going to be... I'm going to make you like a centre sack of it as a going away present of like real Kiwi things.
Oh, yeah.
And might have to put in some Vegemite into there. But what would you have that's kind of similar, that's dark and brown and you put on your toast in Ireland?
I mean, Nutella. Nutella's pretty good. I don't know. Is that in any way similar?
Yeah, it's got a lot more sugar and a lot less sort of yeasty stuff going on.
Okay, cool. Yep.
But I mean, it's certainly, my dad loves putting Marmite in his casserole. Is a bit of a, mix for the gravy.
Mixing it up, yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to know in the comments, wherever you are listening or watching to us live across all the different channels. I can see them right here, and I love getting to your comments throughout the show. If you're new to the show, welcome. We love having you along, and if you're really enjoying the show, make sure you share it to your friends. If you're listening on podcasts, why don't you give us a bit of a rating? Hey? You can say one, it's okay, but we'd love some ratings on podcasts as well. Now, getting on with the show. Fixing the price of strong wool New Zealand seems like more of a bewildering challenge than climate change. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but we may have another great man up for the good fight. Former Beef and Lamb New Zealand chair James Parsons' next challenge is the newly appointed chair of Wool's of New Zealand, and he not only wants to improve the record lows of strong wool prices, but unite strong wool farmers around the opportunity to do things differently. He's going to join us after 7:20. 1.5 million tests have been completed. 157,854 animals have been culled. $166 million has been paid out in compensation so far. 3 years on, how is New Zealand's affected dairy farmers feeling about the handling of M.Bovis? And what can we all learn for future biosecurity challenges? After 7:30, Frank Peters, a dairy farmer who was put under notice and had his animals culled early on, is going to join us to share his heartbreaking journey to save himself and his family from ruins from the eradication process. To close the show, we're going to discuss the winner and finalists of the Fieldays Innovation Awards for 2020 with one of the judges, Andrew Cooke of Rezare Systems. And also, while we're there, the sale of his business to UK group called Map of Ag, as they seek to deepen its farm and primary sector software skills. Map of Ag is founded by not only the one and only New Zealander, Forbes Elworthy of Craigmore Investments. But first up on Serious Country, after the break, we will discuss the new importance of farming with deep traceability and transparency. Not just simple accreditation labels, but pure business ethos. That's with Director of Sustainability and Brand for Synlait, Hamish Reid. This is Serious Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits.
children,
chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
Grow, milk, dredge.
Rhea, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey.
You reckon it'll come out?
Cover it in talcum powder, leave it 10 minutes, you'll be fine.
Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You call a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
So Synlait has recently become accredited under the B Corp status, and it's a way of globally being able to showcase how they care as an organisation about both people and planet. So joining us as the Director of Sustainability and Brand for Synlait is Hamish Reid. Good evening, Hamish. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
So for those of you who are not familiar with B Corp, I mean, there's so many accreditations out there for brands. How significant is this global accreditation?
Well, this one's quite different really by nature in that it's a real movement, a grassroots movement that started 10 or 12 years ago now in America. And it's all about businesses that believe their business and business in general can be a force for good in the world. So it's quite different to pretty much any other sort of certification model that you see out there. And the most crazy thing about it, in our experience, was that when we put ourselves forward as seeking certification, they didn't want us. The starting point for B Corp is you guys aren't good enough to join our movement. So you have to fight for it. So it's really different to anything else out there. But it is absolutely the benchmark for transparency and accountability when it comes to sustainability performance.
Give us an idea of the loopholes that you've had to jump through. Well, not loopholes, but you know what I mean in terms of...
I know what you mean. It's been intense. We've been at it for 2 years. And we had a pretty rapid progression through it, actually. It's taken other companies 5 years to get certified. So we thought it was going really slow, but B Corp told us that we actually did navigate the process pretty quickly. So we just had an exhaustive process to go through. Every tiny corner of our business was interrogated. From memory, there were about 200 modules of work that we had to go through, and a lot of questioning in each of those modules had to be carried out, and we had to submit all sorts of evidence and performance to show that we were worthy to secure the points associated with those specific questions. And when you get enough points, you cross the line and you become certified.
What are some of those things to verify yourself from a social and environmental performance perspective? And what can New Zealand brands following in your footsteps learn from your experience?
Yeah, there's 5 main areas, and it's things that are covered off in the certification process. And it's things like how your business is governed, how you look after workers, how you engage with your community, how you protect and enhance your environment, these sorts of areas. So we learned a huge amount about our business, actually, as we went through this process. There were some real eye-opening elements to it. So, examples of looking after your workers was we had to do a whole lot of analysis on our gender pay gap and our diversity and inclusion policies. And while we didn't make material changes to a lot of the things that we were doing, it really identified for us where we were doing well and where we could do better. So I would really recommend businesses from all corners of society have a go at B Corp certification, just for the pure purpose of understanding your business better and benchmarking yourself against how the very best businesses in the world perform when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to looking after planet and people.
And what was that flow-on effect down through the farm gate, and in particular the scrutiny over the Lead with Pride program?
And what we're up to on that front. They took a deep dive into our farm system and how we work with our suppliers and how they look after their staff and how they look after their animals. All these sorts of points were taken into consideration. And we've had a huge amount of support from our supplier base, a huge amount of interest in what we're doing here. And we think there's potentially a really nice angle for farms to follow the certification process also. So we're talking to B Lab, which is the not-for-profit organisation that runs the certification system, about how we might be able to create a pathway for farmer suppliers who might be interested in going down the B Corp pathway.
And Can I ask you, what Synlait do in doing milk differently? How is that different from the likes of Fonterra's carbon neutral milk that we've heard of in recent weeks? This depth of transparency, there's so many labels.
Yeah, there is. I would say that B Corp is the broad framework for sustainability performance. It covers those 5 areas that I mentioned before, not just about environment, not just about people within your organisation, but people within the community and how your organisation is governed. It's a really broad measuring stick over the way in which your business operates. It can be used for commercial benefit. So, for example, we could put the B Corp logo on our products if we chose to. But it's more about having an assessment of how we're performing as a business overall when it comes to people and planet, rather than a focused commercial claim label.
So you're essentially doing it for the ethos of the company overall, from a hiring perspective, supplier perspective, the whole lot. It's not just about a nice label, another one to add on the front of your products.
Yeah, exactly. And we're doing it because we do deeply care about the land upon which we stand, and we do deeply care about the people that we employ and the people that we engage with in our communities. And we think if we do that well, we will profit from purpose, because our customers and their consumers in those markets abroad where we export to, more and more want to hear stories about how we're looking after people and planet. So while we're really focused on doing the right thing, we know that we're banking an opportunity for the future where our customers will really value what we're doing, and they will buy more from us and they will pay more for it as a result.
Thank you so much, Hamish Reid. He is the Director of Sustainability and Brand at Synlait. Now, I've always been a strong believer in the fact that when you drive forward with purpose, money comes. I mean, it's well and easy and well and good to say that when, of course, we are price takers and work in an industry that has been predominantly commodity-based for so long. But I think the tide is nearly coming in the fact that the consumer is going to be able to make that decision and hopefully return that back to the farm gate. Fingers crossed if we can get our value and supply chain right. So a man I'd like to continue this conversation with is going to come up to the break on Serious Country. He's a former beef and lamb chair, James Parsons, who's now just taken up the chair position at Woolworths of New Zealand. A great challenge in the dire situation around the price of strong wool. Yet, we're being told there is a renaissance around natural fibre. I'd love to hear what James Parsons plans to do about that. Coming up next on Serious Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Well, as a recognised industry leader for many years as a chair of Beef and Lamb New Zealand, James Parsons has recently been elected as the chair of Woolworths of New Zealand. The Strong Wool marketing and export company has recently released its post-COVID strategy. And of course, I'm most interested to hear his thoughts on the latest Wool Working Group vision and strategy, and joins us now from the Woolworths of New Zealand office in Christchurch. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Sarah. Nice to talk to you.
How does it feel being back in a chair position of a significant company in New Zealand?
Yeah, look, it's great. You know, I do enjoy governance, and when I finished with Beef and Lamb in 2018, I still do a few governance roles, but I deliberately put my head down a little bit and just focused on family. But in November last year, I joined the board of joined the board of Woolworths New Zealand, and so more recently just took over the chair just last month. So no, it's great. It's good to get back in the saddle again in a way, and try and make a difference on behalf of growers in the sector.
So you've been on the board for some time. Of course, Rebecca Smith stepped in there initially as chair for the interim period. Being a part of the board's strategy and vision, what would you like to continue and see strong for Wolves of New Zealand?
Yeah, so I've been in the chair for about a month now, and I guess obviously was on the board for a few months before that. I think that things that Woolworths New Zealand does well, and it's probably maybe a point of difference as opposed to a lot of the other wool export marketing companies, is just our relationships further along the supply chain. And so that's something that attracted me as an investor in Woolworths New Zealand years ago when it first started out. And it's just trying to reach beyond, just get outside of that broker model where we're sort of just been like a merchant and a commodity trader. So there's a reasonable percentage of the clip that we transact on behalf of growers, our grower shareholders, is in the more branded Woolworths New Zealand branded products, and so we see that as really positive. But there's still a big portion that we do in commodity, and that's not where we want to stay. I guess the opportunity, Sarah, is around how do we extract more value out of that, and so really the ultimate is to get closer to the consumer. And at the end of the day, growers are really just hanging out to tell their story. And so how do we enable that?
Do you believe strong wool farmers have the appetite to invest to the level they need to in marketing levy form to grow that relationship with brand?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one to answer, because I think that the caveat on that is if there's a compelling proposition. And if I describe strong wool growers, and I empathise with this because I am one myself, is they've heard lots of narrative, and they're struggling for a bit of self-belief now. And so, but however, I would say that if there was a clear value proposition and it was something that was different as opposed to just the same old, I believe that growers would invest. Not all, but there would be enough that would say, we've got to do something. And I'm certainly one of those passionate growers that wants to do something. That's why I got involved.
Is it because we've got to do something because of crisis point? I mean, you're obviously involved over a period of time with the meat and wool, and then beef and lamb, and seeing that levy vote fall on its face. And should there have been an investment period at that time? There's a lot of criticism that strong wool farmers, risk equals reward. And so if you don't invest, then you don't get that back. And we're certainly at a critical point now.
Yeah, look, I agree. And again, it comes down to that self-belief. And so it's easy to say we need to have more self-belief, but there needs to be, clear leadership. There needs to be a clear proposition. And then that growers, if they were to invest more, they need to be able to weigh that up. I guess the Wool's Meat and Wool New Zealand, if we go back to 2009, and I was a fresh director on then Meat and Wool New Zealand board. I'd only been on a few months, and then the wool levy vote went up alongside the sheep meat levy and the beef levy, and things are at a bit of an all-time low there. And so farmers did kick that for touch. I've talked to many farmers since that say that was actually a big mistake. They never realised quite what they're doing. They were sending a message, and understandably. So, of course, we haven't ever been able to, there's been additional attempts to try and get a wool levy going again. I'm not sure whether growers would support it now, to be honest. I wonder if too much water is passed on the bridge. That doesn't mean all is lost, but at the same time, there needs to be some real efforts by those that are operating in the sector to do something.
But if you don't invest in your future, aren't you just preparing yourself to be a price taker for the rest of your future going forward?
Yeah, look, I guess there's lots of ways you can invest. I'm a real believer in the need for industry good bodies like Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Dairy NZ, etc., and other commodity levy groups. And I think there is a case definitely for wool. I guess my comment was more around whether farmers have got enough, if there's enough growers that would support, over 50% by volume and by number, that would raise a commodity levy if that was the pathway that was taken. I think there's, if we can get things up and running, and growers can start seeing enough impetus behind things, then I think they might start getting a bit of belief in it again. But it's, things at rock bottom. I'm not sure whether that appetite would be out there amongst growers right now without that compelling proposition, Sarah. And I think that's really important. There's got to be something fresh and there's got to be something new.
Yeah, sure. And done differently. Around the governance side, from some of the recommendations from the vision and strategy that came out of Damien O'Connor's Wool Working Group report was effectively an industry-led governance. Are you at the table and around some of the murmurs that are happening around what that would look like? There's been talks of a Fonterra-like model or a New Zealand Merino model. How do you believe that could be, or should we continue to leave it up to market forces?
Yeah, I haven't been privy to enough discussions to really comment. So it's still probably early days. So I probably shouldn't pitch in on that one without kind of understanding more of the discussion in that department.
Yeah, certainly. And with regards to your strategy for Wools of New Zealand, is it going to be in a lot more of a long-term supply contract type model?
Yeah, that's certainly our desire to move more towards that. COVID's come along and it's knocked a bunch of us around in terms of the wool sector. And so, it's just a case of regrouping and pushing on. I think we've been guilty of having too many balls in the air and not enough focus. And so for us, it's about just focusing in on the key things and the key drivers that will really make a difference. And so that's part of our strategy now. And just getting closer to the consumer. At the end of the day, I think this is really important, Sarah, that growers are just hanging out to tell their story, and so part of our strategy is how do we actually enable that? It's not about us telling the story for growers. It's about creating a platform for growers to tell their story. And they've got a great story. When you think about the ethics, the values, just the love and care and attention that goes into producing wool off our hills across New Zealand, it's a fantastic story. Nothing can beat it. And so the best people to tell that story is our growers. And so that's part of our strategy is how do we get that through to the consumer.
One of the worrying stories, though, James, and you're involved in the genetics business, is the real big swing to breeds such as Dorper and Wiltshire because sheep farmers have chased the meat game now for so long that they haven't valued wool when it comes to genetics in terms of fleece weight or quality and shed handling, etc. Wool genetics is something that takes some time. How would you best encourage and support those sheep stud breeders to continue at it?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So as a Coopworth breeder and breeding Romneys, we still, we really value the wool. But it's hard to keep saying to ram clients that you need to keep chasing the wool when the money that they are receiving is so poor. So I can understand some of them going that way. I personally have always held the faith around wool, and that's why I've got involved more recently in terms of what I'm doing now. Look, I think it's at the end of the day, we're seeing a real dip now where the cost of shearing, the cost of harvesting is exceeding the returns you're getting. But that's it's been a more recent phenomenon. I think we'll bounce back out of this, and but the real opportunity is to obviously get the price up per kilo at the farm gate significantly. So it's actually becoming a real money earner. I think back to my dad when I was a kid growing up. He used to structure his mortgage payments 6 monthly, which aligned with his wool check, being second share and main share. It's changed significantly now.
I have a similar story. At boarding school, I was only allowed to get clothes once a year. My mum would make me go in and lay by all the clothes. So then when the wool check came in, she'd come to Dunedin and go around the stores.
Fantastic.
So we all totally know how much it is such a big part of farming businesses was, and would love to see it into the future. James, on behalf of the audience, we all wish you the best of luck from the bottom of our hearts, because we genuinely look forward to the journey that you're on being a positive one.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, appreciate it.
And a great man to be at the helm, James Parsons, of course, former beef and lamb chair and a sheep and beef farmer from Northland. And of course, as he said there, sheep stud breeder, Coopworth stud, so intimately has a passion for wool, strong wool, that is. Now, somebody who has been at the heart of the M.Bovis challenge for the past 3 years is farmer Frank Peters, and he's going to be joining us after the break to discuss how he's quite happy happy that we're getting close to the a smaller end of the eradication process from the heartache and financial struggles that his farming business and family have been through, and that it hasn't all been in vain. So Frank Peters will join us up next on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that, or overstocked, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddocks, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe we've got some of the best English type deer in the country, if not the world. And to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers of venison to Silver Fern Farms.
Now, we've really got you going in the comments below, and this is with regards to not only the new suggestion that we should be drinking Marmite. Yes, that's right. Marmite have come out and suggested, did you not know that Marmite was a hot drink? Yes, you heard that here. We've got a comment saying this is absolutely hideous. Yes, but then others saying, no, this has been a thing for a long time, that their mother used to feed them that when they were sick. So it's like a little bit of a Marmite miso kind of thing going on. I'd love to know your thoughts. Of course, do you like Marmite versus Vegemite? Really easy thing to put in the comments below. But also, what is some of those bizarre, weird things in the way that you've consumed Marmite? Jock Innes likes it under a poached egg with lots of black pepper. My mum used to make Marmite and lettuce sandwiches. They were the most disgusting thing. Anyway, on to our next interview. Mid-Canterbury dairy farmer Frank Peters has been embroiled in the Mycoplasma bovis eradication program since his 1,400 cow herd was first detected with the disease in early 2018. Now, in an article by Annette Smith on farmersweekly.co.nz, you can get a full in-depth breakdown from Dr. John Roach and as well as Frank Peters' story. At the time, Peters slammed the Ministry for Primary Industries for its decision-making and lack of transparency, urging officials to share more of its M.Bovis response information, and everyone would be better off. He acknowledged in speaking out he was going where others feared to tread, and not as fearful to speak up 3 years since the M.Bovis eradication decision. Frank Peters joins us now, and I'm happy to take questions from the audience as well. If you do have any for Frank, put them in the comments below. Frank, thank you for joining us. What was it like to be told that your whole herd could be wiped out without any way of proving they had the M.Bovis disease originally?
It's just devastating, really, because we sort of went through the first testing part. We didn't know why they were coming to test us. We had an inkling of cows we'd bought a few years before, but that actually were out of the time zone, so it wasn't that. So we were still, we wondered right up until, took us close to a year to figure out why they'd actually come back to test us after we had a clear milk test. So, they came back, and it came from a milk test that was inconclusive in the original test. So they came back and tested. So they got an inconclusive test. They did another one again, and that's where we got our clear milk test. And then they came in February and said, well, we need to test your herd. So we're standing there wondering why. So their first test and the things, that came back very low. So we thought that was right. And our MPI officer that was there, he turned around and said, yep, you're looking pretty good, Frank. You're pretty clear. And then they did the second test, and it was still, the antibodies were still low, but the thing that we came back had a positive on a single milk sample. So that one cow sent us really crazy. So that just, I can't really describe it, really. It's pretty hard for things to just say, well, hey, it's over. How do you deal with that?
What was the communication style like from MPI in those early days?
Well, basically the thing is you had it, we'll go away and decide what we're going to do, because at that stage they hadn't decided that they were going to. There was about 8 or 9 farms that had gone positive early that they decided to eradicate. And we were just sort of up in the air because we went positive on the 12th of April, and it took until about the 4th of May before they said they were going to eradicate them. So in reality, that sort of really, it was too close to the end of the season. We still had to move forward and try and get another herd for the following spring, because the other part of this all is that we winter milk as well. Mm. So consequently, and when we went positive, we were in the middle of calving. So that didn't help either. And then so we've got 2 dairy sheds on our property, so we were fighting to try and keep the winter herd and carry on through one shed so we could at least, sustain some income. They said they were going to eradicate, and they never even told us at that point that we could keep our winter herd. But we sent all the spring ones away first, and we kept the winter herd. And then in beginning of June, they said we could keep our winter herd. So, yeah, it was a long, drawn out. You didn't really know from one day to the next what was going to happen. We got Dairy NZ guy came in and started talking about our feed. Well, we're pretty well organised with a runoff and grazing and silage, and because we have to have things up our sleeve with the winter milk scenario. You can't go and run out of feed too quickly. So he came in and that's all right. So that was it. We were sort of left to our own and get messages every so often. But once we started looking at things, there was too many things that were wrong and behind it.
Yeah, and let's talk about those early days when you were told to eradicate your cows. What sort of lines of messaging was coming around how you'd be compensated and when at those early days?
Well, back then the thing was just your running costs. So in reality, anything that affected, that was feed, but anything that affected if we'd had to separate a mob, any fencing or what have you, that was all paid for. Anything that if you were wanting to get rid of cull cows, then you couldn't. They would pay for the feed. So there was all that sort of thing, and you didn't really know. You were asking your the guy that came and saw you all the time about running it. Does this qualify? Does that qualify? What happens here? What happens there? So in the early stages, we didn't really know much at all. With the compensation, they just sort of come out, well, you're going to have to get your cows valued, and then we'll, you'll get compensated from there. So,
and let's talk about the valuing of the cows, because there was a lot of debate around who was qualified to value and what a fair value was. How long did that process take?
Well, that process took close to a month. They come in and they wanted all your herd records, and in reality, a couple of guys come and had a look at them, and then I think there was about 5 or 6 guys, a couple or 3 from the North Island and a couple from the South Island, related the average values over New Zealand, and that's what the value you got on the day.
And what about the genetic background and the superior performance of your particular herd that you missed out on in the long run?
There's a little number that says beside a cow at the moment that's got a BW, and that's what sales were going by then. Everybody's BW. Didn't matter if she did 300 milk solids or 600 milk solids, just whether the BW meant everything. So 55 years of genetics back meant nothing.
And let's talk about the traceability program of Nate. And were you completely compliant and able to show records of where any animal transactions had gone from yours?
Yeah, we were probably, I would say, in the 90% rate. Like there's probably a couple of bulls here or there. The thing is that went to the works that weren't recorded or whatever, but not, we weren't far out at all. But anything that wasn't recorded with Nate, the thing is, that brought us up. We knew exactly where they were, so there was no problem in the traceability anywhere of our stock at all.
You speak in the article, and Annette Scott's gone into some great length and detail on farmersweekly.co.nz under M.Bovis eradication on track, that you were being told to keep quiet and that you believed you knew what was going on the whole time, and you've since been proven right. What was that in regards to specifically?
It was actually going on about the things about what farmers needed to know. We found that our guy that came and saw us was only a sparrow, and he'd only give us crumbs about what was actually happening, what needed to happen, what was going forward, where we were. The thing is, how things were to be worked out. In reality, the thing is unfortunately, MPI didn't really know what they were doing. They hadn't gone into this before. The government decided to eradicate it all. That was great. But at the end of the day, the thing is, MPI had to, in reality, create the whole process. So it's great, but the thing is to turn around and say, right, we're going to eradicate this, go and put the cows on trucks. But how does the farmer actually get back to square one? How do we actually turn around and get paid for milk? Because at the end of the day, we all know Fonterra and other factories payouts are staggered, and we get other things, we get bonus points and all that sort of carry on. So it just sort of, how were they going to work out the milk scenario? Because you've got this season milk, you're getting paid for that milk for the next 6 months. So it's pretty hard, and it was a mismatch. And then for us too, we've got a winter milk program on top of that, which, that just puts really a bit of a mess on it. So they didn't really know how they were going to do that. And, of course, they were trying to invent the wheel, and instead of turning around and coming out to farmers and farm advisors to actually come up with things with a process that was going to work pretty good for everybody. In reality now, if a guy goes positive, the thing is within 10 days of that going positive, the thing is they've got everybody around a table discussing how they're going to go forward. Heck, the thing is, I had one guy, and about the thing is, and a farm advisor came and wrote a few notes down and said, "You're sweet, see you later." So, and then we're just sitting there as a family. Where do we go from here?
And you're saying that you're happy to hear that 3 years later that what you've been through hasn't been in vain, this heartache, and you've sort of discussed some of those improvements in the process. What's your main advice to farmers into the future, and of course MPI, to ensure that future biosecurity challenges are going to be far less brutal?
Get out with the farmers first and things and find out what's going on. And in reality, still to this day, we still don't know where it came from, do we? There's a lot of gossip. There's a lot of, we're still banking on that it came in 2015. Well, we've got other people think it's a lot longer and what have you. So on a biosecurity, but the thing is standards, can it still come in our country? You've got to ask that question, and they say, no, we've blocked all the holes that possibly could. Well, I hope so. But
how do you know you blocked the hole if you don't tell us what the hole you've blocked is?
That's right, exactly. That's my point. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just posing the question. If you don't know where it came from, the things, it's pretty hard to say you've actually blocked the hole.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that our audience will be genuinely, compassionately thinking, how are you getting on now in rebuilding your herd?
Yeah, we're getting there slowly. The thing is that the problem for us was that in reality, when we went positive, we went out. We had to go straight out and start looking for cows. So we actually found a perfect herd that we thought was great. You know, we were happy with taking that herd. It was going to be all right, but then unfortunately that bloody thing, this herd went positive to M.Bovis as well. So, and that was basically I think it was about the 2nd of June it went positive. 10th of June they said we weren't allowed to take it. So we had to go and hunt for a herd to replace our spring herd. So we actually didn't have a hope in hell of getting what we wanted. So we just had to go and buy a herd. There's nothing wrong with the herd, it was all right, you know, but it just wasn't the type of cow that we really wanted. So consequently, the thing is to cut a long story short, it hasn't been, but the thing is the herd that it can't do the production that we wanted it to. So we've got to go through a process of trying to work through that. And we're getting there, but it's we've improved. Like the first year, we've improved. This season we just finished, we've improved 40 milk solids a cow on the fingers on the first year. So that's pretty good improvement. We're pretty happy with that, but we need things probably another 50 or 60 to move yet. So we'll be happy when we get to that, but it's not going to happen overnight. So our winter herd, again, you know, like we knew we were allowed to keep it, so we knew for a long period of time that herd was going. So we managed to get out and get that herd, the herd that we wanted for our autumns, and so we're really pleased with that herd, and we're really, really happy with that one. So we're pretty lucky there, we think. So
that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Frank Peters, the early on affected dairy farmer in the M.Bovis eradication process. And I think a shining example that, you know, as tough as it gets, it does eventually come right. And we have the resilience in this country when we've got wonderful examples like Frank Peters there. And of course, as I said, farmersweekly.co.nz for a full-length journalism there from Annette Scott. Now we're talking around long-term government strategy and what your thoughts are. I'd like to read out some of these. Anthony saying, putting Labour into power after having a strong government when John Key was at the head of the table was based on the primary sector, and I don't think Labour understands what is really feeding them. Michael Ross has said 2019 our ag sector contributed 80% of our exports but was only 6.5% of our GDP. And Jock said the destruction of pest boards was a dumb move. Rabbits and wallabies have been out of control ever since. Local board bosses always knew about the hotspots and worked well with farmers and the board. John Williams, idealistic philosophy against on the grounds of practicality. And would you like our latest Marmite combination, Joel?
Go on.
Vicky said Marmite and walnut sandwiches. There's a fun one. Now, next on Serious Country, I have to ask our next guest about his favourite too. To close the show, we're going to end on a celebratory note with the winners of the 2020 Fieldays Innovation Awards, broken down by one of the judges, Andrew Cooke from Rezare Systems. And we couldn't find out why he sold his agri-tech business to a UK company just recently. All that up next on Serious Country.
This is Serious Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Well, we have to lead from the front when demonstrating what innovation truly means, and pivoting to become the world's first agricultural show completely online with 108 days notice to go. Developers working on it in lockdown to create a benchmark for events into the future was, of course, our National Field Days, finished up on Friday over a 2-week virtual event online. One of the pinnacle events within the Field Days week is always my favourite, is the celebration of innovation through the Innovation Awards, and this year was no exception to leave out celebrating our finest inventors and bright minds. Joining us now to discuss this, the award winners, and tantalise you with inspiration is one of this year's judges, Andrew Cooke from Rezare Systems. Andrew, having been involved with software development for agribusiness, developing tools for nutrient management, feed planning, traceability for years, firstly, what makes New Zealand's mindset to innovation so unique?
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Look, I think one of the things that makes it unique is how close we all are to the country and to agriculture. It's all around us, even in our cities, and we sometimes complain about people becoming divorced from agriculture. But every year we have a bunch of entrants into the Field Days from high schools, from colleges, and those people aren't necessarily from rural families, but they are very in touch with what's happening in our economy. And I think so. One of the real benefits is we get people who are maybe doing different things. Maybe they're doing IT or engineering or chemical science or whatever else it might be. But where do they look around and what industries can they play in? Agriculture is so important to New Zealand.
I'm just looking through let's start on our youth and the wonderful St Paul's Collegiate School with Flash Flow. It must just blow your mind how the youth of today are coming up with some incredible innovations. Can you tell us about that particular one?
Yeah, so that particular invention is it's effectively a leak detection tool, and look, there's lots of different ways to detect leaks in pipes, and I know for farmers it's a big thing. Every farmer says to me, diagnosing water problems. So these guys have come up with something really simple, but at the same time quite clever, and it's a take on the thing that would stand up on your tank and show you the tank level, but it's digital, and it's a light, and it plugs into the water pipe, and it shows you if you've got a leak happening. And again, every year several schools have good entrants, and I would say that's an outcome of their curriculum and their good teachers.
Now, I'm just having a look here. One that's caught my eye, because when we were at Lake Hawea Station, I understand that they are already starting to implement this unique recognition, a facial recognition of sheep.
I know.
This is our future.
Yeah, I think it is. And it may not be exactly as we saw it with this entry into the Field Days, but we're seeing people creating software that recognises sheep and cattle, just like facial recognition for humans. And to you, all sheep, well, maybe not to you, but to many of your viewers, all sheep might look the same, but to the computer, they're definitely not. They're recognisable too.
Andrew, because no sheep will be listening to this, I believe all sheep have the same intelligence, though. When you work with now, like, what I'm interested in is that there's the Innovation Awards and that what differs across them, but also the sort of the particular stage they're at, and we're from prototype right through to an innovation of something that's already commercialized. What are some of the great journeys that you've seen over the years where a good idea has actually got through to commercial?
Yeah. And I guess it's worth noting there's three major categories of awards. There's the Grassroots Award, which is really targeted at inventors. You don't have to have any level of polish. It doesn't even need to be really working. A lot of people come into inventions with an idea and they want to test whether it's interesting or not. Then there's the Launch NZ category, which is for companies who have, and tends to be companies, people who've actually developed something to the stage where they're starting to commercialise it. And this is their first year of commercialisation. Maybe they're just kicking it off at Field Day. And then you've got international, which is really designed for, people who are getting into probably 3+ international markets with their innovation. And to me, the exciting thing is we see this progression. Whether it's the wood splitter from a few years ago with Ayla Hutchings, winning that as a young inventor and then moving through. We certainly saw, Antahi Innovations were back again this year after winning some awards the other year with the Trusty Tuber. And we saw Pick Me not in the awards this year, but last year they kind of swept the deck in the grassroots section, and then we've seen their business grow and now heading into being an international business. So there's some exciting things happen if you get involved in Fieldays Awards.
And on the challenges that the inventors are seeking out to find a solution for, it's always encouraging to see how many are environmentally focused.
Yeah, and that varies. You see some environmental focused ideas from people who are just creating their first grassroots startup, right up to this year and indeed last year. Entries from some of our largest companies, but investing huge amounts of money in new innovations that will help the environment.
Andrew, do you think there'll be a Fieldays Innovation year where there's nothing to do with fencing? We have an obsession with improving fencing in this country.
We do, whether it's a pigtail or a standoff or whatever else it might be. Absolutely, every year. Something to help you get the post in a little bit easier. Absolutely. But again, it shows you that inventions don't also have to be groundbreaking. They can sometimes be just that little step on.
Now let's get into talking all about you, Andrew. There's a story here on Farmers Weekly about you moving on. What's happening with the Map of Ag, which of course New Zealander Forbes Elworthy's company, Craigmore, is investing in. Is this the end of you in the agri-tech space, or is this just the next step for you?
Yeah, no, this is very much the next step, not just for me, but for the Rezare Systems business as well. So I don't know how many people know our story, but Rezare started off as a spin-out from AgResearch 15 years ago. A group of us, just a small group of about 5 people who had worked at that sort of meeting point of software and science, really, creating some of the models that underpin a range of the tools that are used around the country today. And we built the business up to about 40 people and started opening markets in Australia and the UK. And in the UK, we bumped into Map of Ag, which were also a spin-out from a New Zealand business. And just the sort of, we were doing so many things the same, slightly different business model, that we thought, hey, it's worth actually putting these two companies together. So Rezare Systems is becoming Map of Ag New Zealand, trading as Rezare, and will become effectively the core software house of Map of Ag, as well as doing what we were doing before.
And I love that when you see that there is similarities and merging together for the better good of the farmer, the audience. I learned a very big word, interoperability, this year. Apparently something we're not very good at in this country, especially in ag.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's just because of the sorts of businesses we have. We have a lot of cooperatives who each have their own scale, and then our small startup players tend to be very, very small. Whereas probably, what I see when I do work in Europe is that there's a whole bunch of players that are probably mid-market players, all compete against each other, but also realizing that they have to the systems have to talk to each other, right? And how many times do we see farmers in New Zealand say, if I could just get away without having to put the same data into 5 different systems for compliance, I'd be happy. Well, that's the sort of problems you're trying to solve with interoperability.
Oh, and we're glad that you're not leaving the sector, because I need good men like you at the helm and at the table. Thank you so much, of course, being at the judging table for the 2020 Fieldays Innovation Awards. If you'd like to, head over to fielddaysonline.co.nz and search the Innovation Awards. It's actually a lot of fun to be able to see how clever we are, clever little Kiwis that we are in this country. Thank you so much, Andrew Cooke, for taking the time to join us tonight. And of course, that is all we've got time for tonight on Sarah's Country. We've got a great show lined up tomorrow. I think that you should check it out. I'm really looking forward to learning about new farm ownership models for young farmers getting in, especially with the tightening of overseas investment buying our farms. How can we do that differently? We're going to speak to Karen Koss, my apologies, from Apiculture New Zealand, around this worrying 20% of Manuka honey has found had traces of glyphosate. I'd like to know how, because in my experience, there's a lot of beehives way up, back in yonder, away from a lot of sprays. What's happening with the health of our bees, and some great new information out from Phil Geno's Ag First consultant following a webinar tomorrow. All that on Sarah's Country. Of course, if you miss any of our episodes, you can catch us on demand on podcast, the individual interviews, so you don't have to sift through the whole show. And if you enjoy watching along, head to Farmers Weekly on YouTube. And, of course, send us an email, sarah@periomedia.co.nz. You've been an awesome audience tonight, and I look forward to doing this all again with you tomorrow night. Good night. Go well.
This is Sarah's Country.